Welcome to the Tin Dog Podcast. Now, this week we'll be mostly talking about the Wrath of Dalek Khan. Okay, so maybe it's not called that, but it might as well be. Or perhaps that's what the next Dalek story is going to be called. But enough of the future, let's talk about now. This weekend's Doctor Who story was very, very good. But then again, was it? Everyone I seem to have talked to or heard speak seems to be just a tiny bit ambivalent. It's very odd, but they all seem to have, I don't know, mixed feelings about it, and I know I did when I was watching it. I mean, on paper, it was a great story. As a two-parter goes, it was a very, very well thought-out thing. You had the Daleks, you had the two-parter, which I know we're getting kind of used to by this point, and let's face it, a two-parter brings it in at the actual length of a proper, old-fashioned, good old-fashioned Doctor Who story, but I don't know, it kind of felt long. Now, I did, catch myself going, the design's very good on this. Now, that's normally something I come up with on a second viewing or a third viewing, unless something's particularly fantastic. For example, during School Reunion, the lighting in the TARDIS, in the very final scene, I was blown away by, but I kind of caught myself thinking, oh, that's very nice, and that's very nice, and oh, that looks good, and not being taken up by the story. Now, the problem for me is the story was a reworking of an old story, an old Troughton Dalek story. Now, I know this story is missing, and we haven't seen it, and let's face it, we've covered Troughton's missing stories and the fact that they're all classics mainly because we haven't actually seen them. But we know the story. We know that in, I believe it's Evil of the Daleks want to know why they always lose. They want the human factor. They inject themselves with the human factor. They have a little bit of a civil war, and some of the humans go off and become all lovey-dovey, and the other Daleks don't go off. And there's a civil... Anyway, so basically they turn on each other and the Daleks are meant to be defeated. However, you can't really have a civil war with 4 Daleks. Well, 3, once you've got rid of Sek. And I don't know, the bit that let the story down for me was Sek. Was the mutant hybrid thing, the Manlek, the Dal Sapien, you know what I mean. It looked like Scaroth of Jaggeroth's slightly crappy brother. And that's not good because I know how much this thing will have cost. But perhaps I'm just still reeling from seeing it on the front of Radio Times. Ah, well. The lovely days of Doctor Who are still with us. I mean, let's face it, we're just grateful we've got the series. And if we start picking on shows like this, alright, fair enough, we're allowed to pick on Love and Monsters. But we're not allowed to pick on, let's face it, Dalek stories. Because this is the beginning of the end. It's the nails in the coffin. It's what happened in the 80s to us. We started complaining. Everyone thought, oh, it's not as good as it used to be. Even the fans say so. Let's just call it an end. So, I'm not complaining. I just wanted something a bit different. And of course, for me, I thought Dalek Sek was going to be the new Davros. Alright, part of me hoped that, because I really, really miss Davros. But then again, in the the Time War, do you think that the Daleks managed to nip back in time and destroy their own creator once and for all, earlier on in his own life? Thus, obviously after he'd created the Daleks. But imagine this, you nip back in the Time War and you kill Davros before they dig him up again, so that Davros never becomes an integral part of Dalek history. You return to this infinite killing machine with the Emperor at its head. There's no need for Leslie Grantham-based antics. There's no need for any of the, Skaro is destroyed. Davros never becomes the Emperor. There's no other stories beyond that. Of course, I'll cover this in my ridiculously exhaustive History of the Daleks podcasts. And I'm going to use the word plural there, because I've got a feeling there'll be 3 Histories of the Daleks. There'll be pre-Genesis of the Daleks, post-Genesis of the Daleks, and Time War and ate the Doctor. History of the Daleks. Of course, that last one will probably be quite short. We're just going off supposition. Can I use words like supposition? I am from Newcastle after all. Anyway, this week's story. It was good. I must admit I wasn't fond of the pig people. I was less fond of them this week. But it was nice to see Martha doing more. It was nice. But then again, I don't know, the Doctor seems to be reacting more like the old-fashioned Doctor than he did with Rose. For example, he would never have considered leaving Rose stranded in Earth. Well, on Earth's past. But Martha, he's standing there going, "Come on, Daleks, kill me." But then again, the one part of the story that I went, nice, to, alright, it wasn't one, there was a few. Let's go through them. It was the design of the Dalek Thompson machine guns. I loved those so much. You know, when you just sit there going, I want one of them, want one now, that'll be cool. Well, alright, maybe it wouldn't be cool, but it would. Oh no, it would be cool. God, you just want one. Moving along. The point of view shot from the Dalek, I know a lot of people have mentioned this. It's the trundling along in the sewer. You didn't actually see the hand movement that went with Trundle, but I'm sure you can imagine that one. It's kind of, you're crouched in front of a Dalek and it's shooting along, and then the camera cuts to standard long shot of Dalek moving along corridor reasonably slowly. Part of me wants to get the moving along the corridor swift moment and then play the Benny Hill music over the top just to see what happens. But we'll get back to you on that one another time. Now, let me see. Well, the basic question is, was it a good story? And yes, it was. It had that whole conflict. It had Dalek Sec, it had one final Dalek. Dalek Khan! Khan! Moving on. Surviving. I must admit, the next time the Doctor meets one of the, cult of Skaro, he really has to have some sort of time jamming device. Otherwise, it'll just be a case of emergency temporal shift. Oh, I've got away again. I would like to see the Daleks not be in the next season. Do you remember when you were a kid and you saw Tom Baker stories and you knew the Daleks were around, You'd seen the 5 faces of the Doctor, so you knew the Daleks, you knew what they were. And then you kind of watched every episode thinking, will the Daleks be in this episode? You hadn't quite twigged that episodes with the Daleks in usually had the word Daleks in the title. Let's face it, we were children. I remember distinctly watching Creature from the Pit going, perhaps the Daleks will be in this one. And then actually enjoying it. I was 5. Let's leave it there. Anyway, my thoughts are that the Daleks should be allowed to rest for a year. Let's face it, they only had the rights for 3 years. So, don't have them appear in Season 4. Season 5, not a problem. Let's face it, they were the recurring villain almost every 3rd week with John Pertwee. But I think they deserve some time off. Let's give Dalek Khan some time off to, build up an army. Of course, the best news this week for me personally is the return of the Tachyon TV podcast. Now, of course, I'm not trying to get you to stop listening to me and listen to somebody else. That would be madness. But I would suggest, no, I demand, you go onto iTunes, type in Tachyon, you know how it's spelt. It's spelt like the particle that travels backwards through time. Yes, I know you already knew that. You are, a closet scientist. Let it go. Type that in, Tachyon TV, and bring up all the episodes. The new episode's exceptionally funny, and the old episodes before their hiatus, let's not use that word, they primarily dealt with sitting round, watching old episodes of Doctor Who, and commenting on it. And they're hilarious. It's like having your friends around to watch an episode, but your friends are funny. Actually, my friends are funny. Well, let's leave it there anyway. I suggest you desperately watch them. Right. To sum up, I enjoyed it, I liked it. So did you. Let's face it, you're not going to be stopped watching Doctor Who for this, are you? But, like me, you hope next week will be better, and let's face it, it's got Mark Gatiss in it next week. I was emailed about Mark Gatiss being in next week's episode, and of course, it's very nice that Mark Gatiss is in the episode, but I still hold out hope that one day he would be the Doctor. But of course, some people have pointed out that he could still be the Doctor, despite the fact that he's been in the episode. I know Colin Baker's been in the series before he played the Doctor, but that was a fairly minor part. But of course, Romana was the princess in the series, the episode, before she became Romana too. So she's allowed to be there. I mean, it's the world's most flexible format. So I can still hold out hope. Now, of course, there were a few things noticeable in the trailer for next week's episode. I could have sworn there was some sort of Time Lord decals. But remember, don't confuse next week's episode, Project Lazarus, or the Lazarus Experiment, with Project Lazarus, the Big Finish story, which of course is the nearest to a multi-Doctor story you're going to get. Around now, anyway. To be fair, I would desperately recommend that story. Big Finish, when they do it right, really, really do it right. Okay, I'll sign off now, and I'll speak to you soon. Be seeing you.